IVM.
Have you heard of the newest club everyone's in? All you have to do is pay your bills on time and you get the chance to win some amazing rewards. Being on Cred feels like I'm part of this exclusive club where I can win some amazing offers and cashbacks simply by doing good, which is paying my bills on time. That's doing good for yourself. I highly recommend it. Just download Cred. This is Storytellers and Storysellers live on tape. You're listening to me, Vineet Kanavar, on the IVM Podcast Network. The guest I have on the show today is someone I've wanted to talk about marketing with for a very long time. I've heard him talk at various industry events about the success of the brand that he works on, which is Myntra, one of the biggest fashion retailers in the country right now. Myntra in the last few years has undergone a change from what would be a regular e-commerce fashion retailer to what is now a fashion commerce entertainment destination. And I'm delighted to have Achin Setia, VP Marketing at Myntra, to talk about it. Hi Achin, welcome to Storytellers and Storysellers.
Hi Vineet, thanks for inviting me. A real pleasure, thank you.
It's great to have you, Achin. Like I was mentioning before we started talking, I've followed the Myntra story very closely because I'm ex-Wavemaker. I spent some time working there, working very closely with the kind of cool stuff that they're doing for you. Let me ask you right off the bat, right? The super unique approach that Myntra has to branding that we've seen in the past few years, right? Whether it is your approach to IPL, whether it is the way you've gone about creating fashion content, whether it is the way that you're using influencers. Tell us a little more about how you're approaching fashion marketing, e-commerce marketing for digital generation. There has to be quite a deep-rooted belief and philosophy to what you guys are doing there.
Sure, I think it's a very broad question that you ask. Fashion marketing for today's generation, there are a lot of elements to that. I'll talk about one of the key elements there, which is content, which is very, very core to what we do as a fashion brand. And a lot of our partnerships, and I can talk in detail about that, whether it is IPL or with what we do in some of our big content IPs, will get the context when I explain you the Uber philosophy of what we do.
Sure.
So for us, content is a very integral part of our business and brand building approach. We look at content not just from the perspective of driving clicks and commerce, but also as a strong enabler to drive really meaningful conversations with our audiences as a brand. See, fashion as a subject is deeply intertwined with the cultural codes of any society. Historically, fashion revolutions have very closely followed cultural, economic, political revolutions.
Right.
And they have in turn impacted the cultures subsequently going forward. Given how strong a means it is for people to express their inner desires and values, we feel it lends itself very well for entertaining, engaging, and meaningful content as a brand. And that's what we do, as Myntra very regularly now. In addition, the average Indian shopper is still at a relatively nascent stage in their understanding of fashion codes. We still look at inspirations from outside the country, from global trends. Hollywood and Bollywood become the key sources of that inspiration for us. And this is the opportunity for content, right? It allows for the right fashion advisory and inspiration to educate the consumer, to give them the right perspective, and also to give them ideas on what they can experiment with as they go about becoming better fashion adopters.
Right.
So that's where fashion plays a very important role from the point of view of using content as well as content as an enabler for us to make our business more than just merchandising and commerce.
Right. There's that cultural connect that comes from the fashion industry. It reminds me of how it used to be earlier, right? I mean, fashion, clothing, it was a commodity in India, right? I mean, Fashion as a concept is also something that at least the middle classes have only recently started to imbibe or to use to express themselves, right? Achin, can you give us a compare and contrast? I know you've been with Myntra for a while, so can you give us a compare and contrast in terms of how these attitudes have moved and how you've used content to sort of nudge them along? Is there sort of an anecdote that comes to mind for how fashion has moved in this country?
Yeah, I think there's a very famous saying which says style is a way to say who you are without having to speak.
Right.
And it is now becoming very, very essential and at the core of how people in India express themselves with fashion, right? I mean, India as a country, if you see is very, very varied, which everybody knows. But our culture is a lot about values. It's a lot about colors, traditions, multiple weathers,
Right.
right? All these things. All this blends very well into the fashion choices we make as people of this country. For some people, fashion is a means to blend in.
Right.
Life in a metro for a small
Right.
town girl, if you remember that story, right? For some, it's a means to stand out and express their own unique identity. If you look at consumers living in smaller towns, fashion requirements are unique to the social norms, right? To the local context. But they're also attracted at the same time, and they seek modern fashion. They seek international brands because they don't have access to those,
Right. Right.
especially in the hinterlands of the country. And that's where it becomes a big proposition, for a player like Myntra to go and talk to them with that. For some people, fashion is, plain comfort at the base level. And at a higher level, it can be a powerful means of feeling empowered and liberated.
Right.
Like it's one of the
Right.
strongest means of cultural expression for us Indians, if you were to ask me.
Absolutely. I love the way you've rooted it into culture, into expression, as opposed to just being a transaction or just being a discount or just a cheaper way to buy clothes. That was the initial perception, or a cheaper way to transact was an initial perception for e-commerce. Let me ask you a little bit more about this, right? About how the brand and the content have really come together to create this cultural movement towards fashion as expression. It's an approach that to me seems very consistent with how Myntra seems to have evolved in the last few years, right? I remember the early years of Myntra was Myntra being the most tech forward of the fashion retailers. I remember being wowed to know that you could actually measure your shoe size on Myntra through through a bit of an AR feature there. Right? In my head, I was like, that is amazing. The attention to detail at that time as well. But now even the brand is a lot fuller with how you express or how you engage with the fashion consumer, right? There's 2 seasons of fashion reality web series. There's Insider and Myntra Insider and Masterclass that's happening on that side as well.
Right.
There's also the way you've engaged with the IPL, right? Which is, again, a far cry from what everybody else is doing, which is Mera logo aap right up per jersey mein laga do and I'm good, right? And again, I know IPL is now called off and all of that, and that's post facto, but can you just talk us through these big bets, right? Because these certainly seem very big bets. They take a fair bit of conviction, a fair bit of production, planning, all of that, right? So just talk us through the big bets that Myntra has taken to evolve over the past few years.
Sure. I'll divide it into 3 parts.
Sure.
Right. The first bet is around what we do on the app from the perspective of engaging our users on a daily basis through content. Right. That is where our on-app content destination, Myntra Studio, comes into play. So I'll talk about that.
Right.
Then what we are doing off the app in terms of IPs like Myntra Fashion Superstar, which are very integral to our brand ethos and brand philosophy in the way we want to communicate with our consumers. And third is some of these partnerships that we've done in the recent times. In fact, we started it last year and now we have extended it this year as well and scaled it up with both CSK and RCB franchises. Let me start with the third one first, given that
Sure.
Cricket is the most popular of the 3 that I mentioned. See, our partnerships with both these franchises is a very, very special one. I would say it is aimed at leveraging the commonalities in passion we have for the game as well as for fashion among a very large cohort of the country's population. Now, we have tried to bring out our USP as India's fashion expert. And I say that with a lot of humility and conscience, because we have spoken and thought a lot about this as to why we should not call ourselves just a fashion destination or something else, but truly think of coming across to the consumer as a fashion expert and then giving them the enablers where they feel it's coming from an expert, right? And they can feel the value out of it.
Right.
So bringing sports, entertainment, and fashion together, which is what IPL does, gives us that platform to do it. Now, in this partnership, we have created a lot of engaging content with both the franchises to bring alive multiple propositions, whether it is best collection of brands, lakhs of styles, original merchandise, fashion advisory through content, and the unique tech capabilities, some of them that you referred to, for a superior browsing experience and a shopping experience.
Right.
Personal favorite content is RCB Insider with Mr. Nags. If you just see what he's done.
Absolutely. Hands down.
Crazy. We also started a very unique engagement cum commerce construct on Myntra called Myntra Fashion League, where we try to bring cricketing passion through colors in an interesting league concept. We had deals growing through the day across thousands of styles with colors from competing IPL teams, and people would actually get a lot of these offers basis which team won and who hit a six and so on and so forth, right? So that's how we have tried to drive conversations, not just by placing a logo somewhere, but across platforms, whether it is the Myntra platform, the jersey of the players, through our TV bets, on-ground branding, and a lot of digital content on varied social and media platforms, right? So that's how we are looking at IPL as an integrated 360 conversation driver with fashion, entertainment coming together.
Let me just double click on that, because you said it in such a matter of fact way that I fear it might get lost, but it is such a far cry from what every other brand is doing, or most other brands are doing, right? There are brands who are doing the logo buy, there are people who are doing just an ad campaign, and here you've got what is essentially a culture 360 sort of thing going with it, where it's not just that you got the team merchandise available to sell, but it's also that such a well thought through breakdown of marketing objectives or communication messages that's also going out through those guys. There's also on platform engagement that's coming. It's a super well thought through and well packaged association with sports, right? And I think these are the kind of cases that will propel what is sports marketing or sports led marketing into the future. I mean, it sounds super impressive, even though I'm not very much of a cricket fan. It sounds super impressive to have all of these elements come up from your association, which is, and again, it's not a cheap association. It's a massive, expensive association from IPL. I think it's a fabulous job to be covering all these bases. I just thought it's important that I make this point out.
Sure. No, thanks for calling it out. I think appreciate your gesture also. See, a lot of this has come to a state where we have got the opportunity to experiment a lot of these things individually. And because we have a tech platform, because we have a very solid influencer ecosystem and a social ecosystem on the digital platforms, and then the brand reflects its values through content, we have learned our lessons on all these three areas. And IPL gives us the opportunity to bring everything together,
right.
While we do the standard and traditional and conventional stuff. So yeah, I mean, that's been our learning. Still a lot of learning, still a lot for us to do differently and experiment with. Not every bet has been successful, I must say, but more often than not, the power of bringing all these things together actually is where the game is to crack, I would say, in a partnership like this.
Beautiful. I'd love to know more about Myntra Fashion Superstar as well. It's
Sure.
It's something that's quite innovative, not just in the fact that it's a fashion brand creating an IP. In its first season, it was on your app as well, but also the content itself is far more inclusive, is far more in sync with Gen Z millennial attitudes. I'd love to understand how you're approaching building this IP.
Sure. No, it's my favorite topic, I would say. It's a baby that we nurtured in Myntra. It's our flagship content IP now. It's also world's first original reality show to hunt for the next big fashion influencer.
Right.
And the interesting part there is, if you think about most global shows on fashion, they tend to focus on designers or models. We thought that was a very constrained space.
Right.
We wanted to talk to every single person who has a smartphone in their hand and a desire to become a social fashionista in their heart. Right? That was the objective for us. And that's a big universe, if you come to think of it, just in the Indian market.
Absolutely. Everybody who wears clothes, I think. Everybody who cares about what they're wearing and has a smartphone. A huge market. Yeah, absolutely.
Correct. So that is what was the genesis of MFS. But that was not sufficient, for having a meaningful conversation with the audience, especially the younger audience, as you said. And therefore, we had to get to something which showed the real journey of becoming a fashion influencer, rather than the dramatization of a reality show.
Right.
That was something we were very clear from the beginning, that we are not doing a show for the sake of doing a good show.
Right.
We are doing a show because it is our way to express what we believe in as a brand. Right. And this platform gives expression to a lot many more people who think that way, even if they don't say anything, but they will see it and they will be able to relate to it.
Right.
So as an influencer, whether, it's not just about how you look. That's a moot point. It's about what you say. It's about what issues you stand for, how you manage criticism and trolling, how you build a fan base to love you for your authentic self, and the same fan base who can criticize you at times that you don't stand true to who you are. Right. So this is the journey of any successful influencer, and people learn the hard way through their lives. And we thought, why should everybody go through the same journey? Can we compress that journey and make it more modular and show people with small experiments on how you should think about when put in a situation like this, right? That is what MFS is effectively.
Right.
It allows us to have conversations on topics that concern the youth of today. I mean, you spoke about inclusivity. There is body shaming. There is gender agnostic rights. There is anxiety handling, managing depression. I mean, multiple such things which people talk about, but there is no platform at large which can bring this together in an entertaining way.
Right.
And having some of these conversations without the fear of interpretation in one way or the other, because it's done through an influencer for their fan bases, right? Eventually. So the first season was actually quite a big hit for us. Surprisingly, it was an experiment at that time. We didn't know how it would work, but it worked. And that gave us confidence for the second season to take it to the next level in terms of both the scale and the width of the conversations. Going back to the purpose for of doing something like this, it gives us the opportunity to contribute back to growing and strengthening the highly unorganized fashion influencer ecosystem in India today, right? And generating opportunities for the aspiring youth, because a lot of people want to make it a profession.
Right.
They want to earn through only this medium, and they have a lot of talent there. And at the same time, it becomes a core asset to share our brand values, as I said, with our customers and viewers. So that's what MFS is in a nutshell.
I mean, I again really love the way that it's well thought out. It's got a very focused audience. It's not for everyone, right? It's not content that it's being made for everyone. It's well thought out. It's like, hey, this is the part of my brand that engages with sort of progressive, fashion forward, ideology forward sort of audience, and that's the space that will safeguard the future for the brand as well. It's a very interesting, very well thought out. Like I really appreciate the way it's come out. And again, as a viewer, and again, I must confess this: I'm a reality TV junkie.
Okay.
I will watch reality TV. I will watch any reality show at least once, right? Just to see what the thrust of the story was. Reality is constructed, right? The way reality TV is, it is constructed. There's very few pieces of reality TV that focus so much on the craft and the conversation. The rest of it focuses on the drama. Sabko Big Boss banana hai, kyunki Big Boss mein drama matlab TRP hota hai, right? But then on the other hand, you have something like MasterChef, right? Which is so focused on the craft, focused on inclusivity, starts a conversation. And I feel like MFS does follow the MasterChef ideal quite sincerely to a big point. So props on that, absolutely, right? Achint, I want to ask you more about influencers, because I think that is, I wouldn't say misunderstood, I would just say not understood part of marketing today. A lot of people look at influencers as a reach builder. A lot of people look at influencers as, unse to sirf engagement aata hai, and engagement is no value for my brand, so it's not measurable. There's so much so many myths around measurability, working with influencers, what's right, what's wrong, should you give them freedom, should you not? How do you approach? What's important for me to bring out from our conversation is, should it be an intrinsic part of how people are approaching tier 2, tier 3 youth audiences or not? How do you get about building a coherent influencer strategy that goes beyond just the metros?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And it could have different answers depending on what is the objective, right? And in any influencer strategy or influencer campaign, that is how I would suggest you start the conversation internally as to what is it that we are trying to achieve. I divide these objectives into 3 categories. Influencers at the end of the day are just people who have a set of people who believe in them for whatever talent they bring to the table, right? And they can help you either in building salience for your brand if the brand values align well with the values of the influencer. And that's the most important thing, because you can't force the influencer to do something which they don't stand for, because then nobody will engage at the end of it.
Right.
It could be used to drive traffic or users. That's the second objective. Depending on whether you are a commerce brand or you are a content-only brand or some other platform, that could be the other way of using influencer. And the third is just pure play engagement, right? Which is building communities and building connects with your audiences. And that's less of a reach game, but more of a deepen engagement with the existing reach that you have.
Right.
So important to start with one of these 3 or let's say 2 to 3 of these objectives when you go into a campaign, and have very clear metrics stacked up against each of these goals. So salience building metrics will be very different in terms of, engagement will not define salience building. Similarly, salience building, which is more around number of people you reach to and the kind of brand lifts you see across social media, will not define engagement levels at the end of it, because you can get more reach by putting in more money behind influencers, right? So this clarity is important, first of all. The second is the campaign, depending on what you choose, the kind of the influencer campaign or the way you use influencers can be very different. I'll give you an example of how we use it on the Myntra app, right? And this example is relevant because we work with a large scale of influencers, almost 1,500 plus influencers on a monthly basis, right? So that's and Myntra being a national platform, these influencers span across smaller towns, bigger towns, metros, and across the country, right? So we are able to talk to everybody across the nation. This is through our Myntra Studio app destination that I spoke about. And for us, the purpose starts with three things: inspiration, entertainment, and education, leading into commerce eventually. Right? Now, this is a very tricky slope or a slippery slope. The moment you think commerce first and you tell the influencers, make something which will sell, what they choose, how they come across, and what they maybe put in the copy, right, will be very different.
Absolutely.
If the incentives are aligned to selling. But if your brief to them is do something which is inspirational, at the same time, which makes people stick around, with the core belief that if you make people stick around and you make them understand something more than what they understand about fashion, they will eventually make a purchase at some point, right? So it's an outcome, but not an input. And for us, that is a very important part of how we engage with influencers, right? So
it's very nicely put. Actually.
So from a platform standpoint, we have made some deep technology investments in desired engagement experiences. If you look at the Myntra Studio feed, it's very similar to some of the social feeds, but it is not an exact replica, right? We have a combination of assets which are very education heavy. For example, we have listicles which you can read. We have curated content which are DIYs and hacks for people to pick up a topic and learn something about it in a very short period of time, maybe less than a couple of minutes. And then we have engaging and entertaining content. We have a lot of celeb interviews. We have big shows like MFS, Myntra Fashion Superstar. But the beauty here is the technology allows us to make every piece of content, whether it's a static or it's a video, shoppable. Right? And shoppable to the exact precision, right? Whatever you see, you can shop it exactly the way it looks. That is where the technology enables the commerce journey. We don't want influencers to sell. We want the technology to sell, right? And what we have seen is going after the engagement, I would say less engagement, but more of stickiness as the objective. We have seen a lot of people actually sticking on to the kind of content, and we have been able to build communities for our international brands. Some of them are bigger than their communities on Instagram. And for some of our international brands, they don't have local communities because they just have global handles. So this is the only medium for them to talk to consumers directly. This helps us sort of serve our influencer strategy, which is, inspiring people and educating people. So that's how we look at it as an example. But when we do a sale event, for example, in a very different context, like the Myntra big end of season sale, then influencers are literally wearing the most popular things which are on the heaviest discounts, and they are selling it. And we have no shame in saying that, please buy, this is the biggest sale.
Of course.
At that time, I think going after just engagement and time spent beyond a point will do no good to us, right? So that's how we cut it out.
Right. You brought up something very interesting in the middle where you said, you're not looking at the influencer to sell, you're looking at the technology to sell. I think that merits a double click to just understand that a little better, right? And here's what I took out of it, and you tell me if I'm right or wrong, and just please add to it because we'd love to know. What I understand is you have a platform that has audience cohorts, you've got engagement metrics that are being held very close to the brand itself. You're able to marry it, chop and change, figure out what really aligns, and that helps drive the sales efficiency. So, which gives you the freedom to focus on engagement or pure engagement as a more long-term way of retaining the audience. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I'll simplify it even further for the
Sure.
audiences. I think it starts with understanding the preferences of the customer, and therefore being able to personalize content to that, right? So basis the shopping behaviors, basis the other content that they would have watched, and basis preferences of similar cohorts that they come from, choosing what content to show to anybody on the next visit. That's one, right? Just showcasing the content.
Right.
The second part of technology is just enablement of shoppability in the content to commerce journey.
Right.
Because it's like fashion drives a lot of impulse as a category. And when you like something, you want to immediately explore it.
Right.
Now, this is what every social platform is trying to solve for, right? Instagram is trying to solve for it in their own unique ways, but nobody provides a seamless workflow for consumers to buy it there and then, right? At the best price with the best brand and original products. So that's the other piece where technology comes in to complete the flow, right? And the third is using a lot of this feedback and giving it back to the influencers to say the kind of customer cohorts, which engage more with your content at what points in time, right? So just like in Instagram, right? The time at which you put a post really matters in terms of the scale and the reach you get. Similarly, for us, it is not just about the time of posting. It is also about the way you represent fashion in your post, right? The backgrounds that you choose, the mood and the attitude that you choose, right? So all that feedback goes through the rich data that we have back to the influencers. And it also helps us to give an opportunity to influencers to test out a lot of these things because they're also learning. Please remember that a lot of influencers we work with, yes, some of them are the best ones, but a lot of them, 1,500 is not all the number one influencer in the country who have made it.
Right.
So they are also still learning in the process. They have, let's say, 50K to 100K followers on Instagram, but they don't have million followers still, right? But what they learn from studio gives them a lot of leverage on what they can do on Instagram and vice versa. And that I think is the interesting part for them as an ecosystem shaping.
For sure, and I think for you as well, it's a long-term benefit, right? If a influencer is learning from your ecosystem, their audience is growing, then they're creating for you, and then they're bringing more audiences in. It's sort of a symbiotic ecosystem in that way, right?
Exactly. Right? Said right, it's very unorganized right now. So we think it's our responsibility as the leader in the fashion commerce to come and invest behind this ecosystem building because it will give returns in the long term to everybody who's making a play here.
Right. It sort of reminds me of what Lakme did at a time with Vlog On and Be Beautiful. It's like 2012, 13, very, very early days of YouTube exploding in India. Sounds fantastic. Let me ask you this very quickly, right? And moving forward from influencers, specifically to the question of ROI. If I were to ask you, what would you say to someone who says influencers mein ROI hi nahi hai? What would be like your 3 simplest pieces of advice for them?
I think I'll go back to my previous answer, which is returns have to be measured against an objective.
Right.
If your objective is not clear, then the metrics will be unclear and returns will always be a question mark. I would just leave it there because ROI needs to be created. It will not be coming to you by itself.
Right.
And as we see this, right, I don't think anybody will go on to the extent to say influencers mein ROI nahi hai. The issues that people face or my fellow marketeers face and people in the marketing teams of the brands that we work with faces, it is difficult to get the exact output out.
Right.
The way we want, the way we envision and the way we visualize because it is difficult. First of all, there are so many of them and we are talking to human beings. We are not talking to machines, right? That we feed in input and we'll have an output coming out. Right. So building a model of number one, choosing the right influencer for the objective that you have is extremely important. And a lot of people don't lay enough emphasis on are the values of this influencer aligning to what you want to say. You can't make the influencer do something which they don't stand for. And I've said this in the previous question as well. The second thing is, measurement with influencers only is also not the right thing to do.
Right.
I think it is a part of the larger story If the campaign is just about influencers and nothing else, then I think the campaign itself is questionable.
Right.
Because what they are just doing is they are reinforcing a message to the consumer through one medium. And the consumer needs to be hearing that message through multiple media for them to be convinced that this is the right thing to do.
Right.
So I would again encourage people to look at the ROI from a collective investments perspective and not just look at it from a specific area of investment, because by that logic, there is no ROI from TV.
Right.
Right. So,
Right.
I mean, people can debate for years, right? What is the ROI from
Absolutely.
TV? But we know that TV has an integral role to play from a mass
Absolutely.
building and from trust building standpoint. And at the end of the day, you look at metrics which are not directly relatable to TV investments,
Right.
however scientific and close you are, but you look at the overall income or overall uplift.
Right. Let me ask you this though, and it's just a thought that popped into my head. Are influencers sort of midway between TV and digital? Is that how you should look at it? Is there a mental model that can be created that looks at it like that? Would that be
No, it's
right to say?
the other model. Actually, they are between word of mouth and brand ads.
Sure.
Yeah, so it's TV is a very different medium, right? TV is just like any one-way communication. I would say,
Right.
even on YouTube, if you play an ad, that's no different from playing an ad on TV from a consumer standpoint.
Right.
Apart from the fact that they can interact on one and they can't interact on the other.
Right.
But otherwise, the messaging is the same, right? But rather than hearing it from my friends and family, if I hear from others who look like me and who I believe in, it's far more trustworthy than hearing from a brand who I always will trust the least. That's how it
Right.
is.
Because they're always selling.
Yes.
Right. Fantastic. I think that was very interesting way of looking at influencers. And you've kind of broken it down very nicely for us. Let me ask you this, just stepping out of influencers and marketing as well, right? There is, I mean, being among the biggest fashion retailers in the country, there must be competition that comes in from all sides. Right? There's obviously giant retailers that are competition as well, but given the nature of fashion, the way it is, there are so many new emerging cultures out of this space, right? There are smaller niche players. There is the rise of thrifting that's happening on one side. There's so many different cultural emergent cultures to resolve here, right? How do you then as a brand stay on top of all of this, and how do you choose which is the kind of behavior you want to try and turn into a user journey and which is like too small to touch right now? How do you look at a competition and the emergent cultures within fashion and stay ahead of the curve that way?
It's a daily hustle, I would say. It's there is no magic formula to that, but from our standpoint, we try to talk to consumers very often and talk to them from various perspectives, right? Not do the same thing again and again, but talk different questions every time over a period of time, and you realize what is really beneath the surface. Yeah, you're able to connect the dots and at least see in which direction the consumer is moving, if nothing else, right? So that's one way for us to stay connected to the ground. The other is, of course, the world today offers you a lot of data, from the social media, where it's very clearly visible as to which are some of the trends that are shaping up. From a fashion perspective, we are one of the largest selling platforms, so we can see the fashion trends and we can predict some of these trends through technology as well in advance. And then relating it back to what consumers want is where the magic comes, at least from our business standpoint. From a competition standpoint, I think I would say it is important to think about competition, but not beyond a point. Because the beauty is in being focused on what you are doing while being aware, but constantly making yourself better. As a brand, that's what we endeavor to do, right? So for us, a lot of things we do eventually are adopted by competition, but that doesn't worry us because that's in a way is justification of what we have done and what we have gone through. But it's the hustle and the endeavor to constantly reinvent ourselves, which is our bigger focus area than worrying about who's doing what, because it's a very large market, let me tell you, right?
Right.
Fashion e-commerce is less than 6% penetration in this country in the overall fashion.
Sure.
So I would encourage everybody to grow and expand the market because only then the market will expand and everybody will benefit from it. Consumer will definitely benefit from it because they will have access on their fingertips.
Right.
And it's a world then where multiple players, multiple different kinds of players can thrive together. Right? That's how big this country is. So I don't think it's a question of bettering somebody else, but it's a question of bettering the ecosystem and building the ecosystem at the stage we are in.
Right. Let me ask you this. You said it's a 6%. What are the biggest challenges for that to grow? Or what challenges, I think, let me rephrase that. What challenges are you focused on to push that along?
So there are a lot of opportunities, I would say, more than the challenges. I think one is it's a highly unorganized markets, Indian fashion industry. So how do you bring sensibility into or structure into the way people shop? First of all,
right.
It's also driven a lot by local purchases with the local shops and people who and a lot of that market will continue to remain. I don't think there is a need to replace that market completely because there is a merit in some of these things. Having said that, for us, from an opportunity standpoint, there are barriers for a lot of people in terms of adopting online fashion.
Right.
And our endeavor is to overcome these barriers, whether in terms of appreciation for why you can actually buy and still believe that you can exchange at any point in time and not and be assured of your money, right? That's one, which is the 30 days exchange and returns policy, or things like size and fit. And Myntra has made a lot of investments in using technology for making it better. It's still not perfect, but I think we are on that journey to find more solutions for people to be able to find the right size and fit for themselves. Our size finder is one of its unique kinds in the industry today. The third is, of course, convincing people about shopping when they want to, when they have an impulse to shop, rather than, just when there is an occasion to shop. Right. So the way shopping happens in the offline world is it's, you go and window shop and you like something and you buy it, right? You should imagine the digital world very similarly. The only difference is that in the digital world, it gives you the opportunity to immerse far more and go much more deeper and broader. But you have to have those kind of experiences, on the platform. Right. And that's what we are trying to build through content and through technology. And then generate that impulse for consumers to shop at the right time that they want. And then there are, also, I won't say barriers, but opportunities to create an ecosystem which works well together between offline and online. Because at the end of the day, the consumer needs the best product to be delivered to them the fastest. Right? So I think that is where we work with a lot of our offline partner brands and are able to showcase a lot more variety to the consumer, and then be able to get them to their doorstep as soon as possible, irrespective of which part of the country they are in. So these are some of the broad areas. At the same time, it's a very different problem statement for men versus women, how they shop. Right? So understanding the gender level nuances there, understanding why they shop, right? What they shop for. And for some people, brands are more important. For some people, just value is important. Value for money is important. And for some people, they are after the edgiest trends, right? It doesn't matter what brand they wear, right? And being able to help them discover what they need in a much simpler manner than them running around, and solving for this either across shops or across platforms is the other big problem to solve for. And the last and the underlying thing to do all of this effectively is depersonalization, because you are serving multiple Indias on a common platform, and it should still look aspirational. At the same time, it should be relevant. So that again requires a lot of technology and data investments, which a digital platform has the potential of doing, I would say.
I love the way you just structured that so beautifully for us. I think there's a lot. I mean, it is, like you mentioned, a mixture of a lot of opportunities and barriers coming in. I think the biggest one that has been solved for in the last few years is connectivity and access. I think more and more services are available in different languages. They're simplified. I think a lot of Indian products have looked at adapting their user journeys more to the Indian internet experience as well. There's so much more going on about education, about choice, about personalization. I think there's a lot to unpack there. Let me round this episode off by asking you to give us some surprising facts about Indian fashion. What, according to you, as the guy who's marketing fashion to India, what according to you is the most rapidly fashion forward city in India?
Interesting question. Actually, let me ask you, can you guess it?
I would say, empirically, without data, empirically it feels like it will be a city that has a large college population and a large sort of first jobber population. So I would go with something like a Pune, maybe Chandigarh. Pune, Chandigarh, Hyderabad, maybe possibly would be my guesses.
Yeah, that's the intuitive guess, but it's none of them.
Oh wow, okay.
So now I don't know exactly which is more fashion forward, but I can tell you amongst the top 2-3 cities, it would be a combination of a Jaipur,
right,
Guwahati,
right.
I mean, one of these northeast Indian cities, right? Definitely in that list. Jaipur is a very interesting one because it's been one of the most fashion forward cities for quite some time.
Right.
And there are smaller cities like Indore, who have a lot of influence from Mumbai,
right,
but are still not in the metro category.
Right.
So these are the ones. I think, in fact, in the top 10 most fashion forward cities, 6 are not tier 1 or metros.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and that's how this country is, right? That's how diverse and democratized on aspirations this India is, right? And that's the opportunity for us.
That's fantastic. It's a very interesting piece of trivia there. Second thing that I want to ask you is, what is the highest selling kind of garment in India?
The highest selling garment, I think, is a question I would not answer directly, but I will tell you that most searched garment, one of the most searched garments is kurtas. Right. And you would believe that if people search for something more, there's a tendency to buy it more often also. So it is one of the largest individual style that goes around.
And that's across men and women put together, sort of?
Just women, I would say.
Oh, just women. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So women's kurtas are the most searched garment, piece of garment. Very interesting. Last thing that I want to ask you is, within the cities that you talked about, right, tier 2 cities, what is sort of a city that has surprised you with how often people buy it?
So I won't say there are any surprises on the often people buy piece here. I would say the northeastern cities have a lot of affinity towards fashion buying. They are some of the highest fashion buying or fashion revenue generating cities relative to the population size.
Sure.
And that's also reflective of the culture there. So again, that's not a surprise. I would say it's expected. Similarly, the top metros are also highest fashion buying. And I think this is just purely basis the spending power, the access to offline and online and data, which came early, and the education and maturity of this audience.
Sure.
So the speed of growth, I think, in the tier 3, tier 4 towns, especially in the last 3 to 4 years on fashion buying in commerce, that is what has been the most surprising for me, and,
sure.
At the rate at which they have adopted online fashion commerce.
Fantastic. Achin, I feel like there's so much that I want to ask you. There's questions popping in my head left, right, and center, but I know it is 8 o'clock on a weeknight, and I'm sure your long weekend starts tomorrow as well with you. So I'm not going to keep you long. Before I let you go, I'm going to ask you something that I ask all my guests. It is to share a piece of entertainment that is close to you, that maybe left a lasting impact, or something that you enjoyed putting together for Mitra. But a piece of entertainment as a recommendation for my listeners.
A piece of entertainment that I enjoyed watching, or something to be out.
Yeah, that's close to you, that you enjoyed watching, or if it's something that you put together, it could be that as well. But yeah, something you enjoyed watching would be nice. Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can talk about something we put together. I think you should just watch what we have done with Bhuvan Bam and with RCB of late.
Right.
So that's been my recent favorites, I would say, and the reason they are favorites is because it's in the space of a lot more in the space of fun and entertainment, more than any serious fashion talk. So it's truly one of my favorites from a brand standpoint. MFS continues to be my very close-hearted favorite. And there's a piece of content we did with Sonakshi Sinha in season 1,
right,
which was her coming out and talking about body shaming very openly. And that was my other personal favorite, which I think came very naturally from Sona and became a very powerful piece of communication for us,
right,
on what we stand for as MFS. So yeah, these two I would suggest taking a look at.
Wonderful. And something from your personal bag?
Again, piece of entertainment, you mean?
Yeah. It could be a book, could be a meme, could be a video game, could be anything.
Yeah, I can talk about a book. I love the book Shoe Dog.
Right. Phil Knight.
So The Phil Knight book, yeah. So that's one of my personal favorite reads. And the other one I really enjoy is *Sapiens*. I keep reading it and reflecting on every word that Mr. Harari has written there, which has so much depth to it, right? So it's like the Christopher Nolan movies, right? You can keep watching it again and again, and you will still find something which you never understood before.
Brilliant.
So that's where I would be, yeah.
Fantastic. So that's Shoe Dog by Phil Knight and *Sapiens* by Yuval Noah Harari. Those are the entertainment recommendations from Achin Sethia. We're at the end of a fantastic chat. Achin, thank you so much for taking time out and talking to us on storytellers and story sellers. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vineet. It was good talking to you, actually. I mean, it's good to reflect on a lot of things when somebody asks a question like this, and very pinpointed questions. So thanks for making me talk, and wish you a very good weekend.
Thanks so much, Achin, once again. It was wonderful to have you on. That's it from me, Vineet Kanabar. This has been Storytellers and Story Sellers. This is me saying goodbye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I would like to thank the sponsors of the network this week, Cred, Ciet, and PayPal. Thank you so much. You make everything possible. Before I recommend a couple of episodes, I just wanted to quickly talk a little bit about Ankush Champanerkar. Ankush was a team member who we lost due to COVID-related complications. He was a really fun guy, and I wish I knew him better than I got to know him in the short time he was with us. But I hope that you can remember him in your thoughts and prayers. Also, a quick reminder about Pod for Change, the initiative set up by the podcasting community, along with Give India, the NGO partner. You can go to tinyurl.com/podforchangeindia, and I'm sure that it would be much appreciated, any donations that you could give. With that, let me quickly give you a couple of highlights from this week. Aditi Mittal was on Cyrus Says. Great episode, to check that out. On the Habit Coach, Ashton talks about using the word impossible and suggests some better alternatives. On Advertising is Dead, Varun was joined by Harsh Lal, the co-founder of the Soul Store. On This Round is on Me, Gauri talks to Pankit Desai, who is the co-founder and CEO of Secure Tech. And finally, I'd like to mention that we have a new show called Tere Mere Raste, hosted by Keshav Chaturvedi. This time it's a trip to the beautiful blue city of Jodhpur, but every week he's going to tell you about his travels as a photographer. It's really well put together, really well done. I couldn't be more excited about the show. Please do definitely check that out. And with that, I hope we see you again next week.
Hi, I'm Zarina Poonawalla, host of the Empowering Series podcast on the IVM network. I happen to be a peak performance coach and leadership coach by profession, and I'm here to share with you productivity tools, life-altering techniques, and real-life hacks to help you achieve your maximum potential in everything you do, your relationships, professions, careers. So tune in every Monday to unleash your inner power. Be safe, be well, be empowered.